Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome. This is your host, Steve Fielder, coming at you one more time on the Gone to the Dogs podcast. Today, we're podcasting live from the American Plott Association's annual Breed Days in Greenville, Tennessee. It's been a busy weekend already. This is Saturday morning, and I was able to corral a couple of guys that have been real busy here at Breed Days, and without listing all the things they've been into here the last couple of days, I'll let them talk about that as we go along. But I'm very, very happy to introduce to you my friend and fellow Plott enthusiast from up in Delta, Ohio, Bill Scheninger. How are you doing, Bill?
Doing well. Thanks, Steve.
Well, it's good to be with you for sure. And we've also managed to corral this guy that loses all the sleep for you out there handling dogs and so forth. I believe he's also from Delta, Ohio, a young man here with all the energy that I wish I had, Alex Recker. Alex, how are you, friend?
Good. How are you, Steve?
Oh, man, I couldn't be better. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time today to spend a few minutes in recording with me, and I know that our listeners are going to enjoy this episode because I think you both have a lot of interesting things to say. First of all, let's just get the little details out of the way, just a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into how you got involved in hunting this breed of dogs would probably be considered a rare breed in most dog circles, certainly in UKC out of the Coonhound breeds, with the exception of the American Leopards, which came aboard rather late in the game. The Plott is probably the fewest in number, but for enthusiasts that know the breed and all, there's just nothing like them. And that's what I want to kind of peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, today and kind of see why, that we like these Plott dogs and what we see in them that maybe other people don't. And then just, in general, have a good coon hunting conversation. You guys up for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
here for it.
Bill, I'll let you lead off, buddy. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm a farmer up in Delta, Ohio. We farm about 2,000 acres of corn, soybeans, and wheat. I have a plant breeding or a seed business, and I do some of my own plant breeding, and that's I don't know, that may be something that complements my hound business a little bit, that I understand genetics and pedigrees a little better than your average cat, maybe. So, that's been my life. Have a family farm there that my dad started. Generally have a few people working for me, and I'm fortunate right now that I can employ a handler and a farmhand at the same time. So.
Oh, all right. So that's something I learned that I didn't realize about you, Alex. Tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, including this work for Bill.
Well, Steve, I grew up in Putnam County, Ohio, which is about an hour south of Delta. I grew up in a real small town, a farm family. Both my parents are from large German Catholic families. My Uncle Gordy from down in Florida, Gordy Schroeder. Well. And I believe he was along the first time I went coon hunting. And there's only been 2 or 3 times ever since then, him living in Florida. But so that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay.
And come around Plott dogs, at least.
Well, there's so many ways I want to go with this conversation and all, and I guess this would be a good. Well, let me lay a little background then, Bill. Let's talk about how you got involved initially with the Plott breed.
Can I go way back and start?
You can go as far back as you want. When the first 2 Plotts came off the ark, if you want to go.
Well, I was going to start with my hunting with my dad as a child.
Oh, there you go. Those are always great stories.
So like Alex's story, I come from a German Catholic family, and my parents had 6 children. I'm the oldest of 6 children, and I had another brother a year and a half younger than me. And Mom needed a break. Dad wanted to go coon hunt, so he drug us boys along at night. And we were just little tykes, and it was a chore for Dad to take us, and it was a challenge to keep up. Back in those days, the fields were all, well, in the area where I live, it's patchwoods and farm ground. And back in those old days, in the fall, those farmers were fall plowing, and we could hear I remember hearing the bang, bang, bang of the ears on the ear corn. Some farmer working late at night, and those ears hitting the wagon. And then a lot of times hear that fender mounted radio and that old farmer out there plowing late at night. When we'd have the rain and the mud was terrible. I remember the mud sticking to our boots, and we were so tired, and had those kerosene lanterns, and Dad would get so aggravated we'd fall down and break the globe. And yeah. But Dad hunted black and tans. He loved his coon hunting. It was his release. But Dad was a businessman and a family man, and Dad didn't spend a lot of money on his hounds. I mean, he bought what he could afford, but first and foremost was getting a successful business and taking care of his family.
Sure.
So
as it should be.
Yeah. Dad didn't really invest any money in dogs until about the late 80s. He bought a couple of nice dogs, and bred a couple dogs. Found a friend that had a female direct out of Pac-Man. He switched over to the walkers, and Dad did just a little bit of coon hunting from 85 to about 90, or a little bit of competition coon hunting, I should say, from 85 to about 90. I was in college, and I graduated from high school in 1980. And back in those days, we could drink at 18. And
lucky dog.
my parents were a little concerned about what I was doing with some of my spare time, and thought that maybe if I got more interested in coon hunting, it would be a good idea. And Dad had sold a nice young black and tan to a fella, and regretted it from the day he did. And encouraged me to see if I could purchase that dog back. I was able to contact him, and we agreed on a purchase price of exactly double what my dad had sold the dog for. So,
of course,
that next weekend, on my way home from college, I stopped in to see the man, purchased that little female black and tan, put her in the trunk of my car. Imagine that. Headed home. We tied her up, and we were busy. I believe that was spring planting time, so we were busy getting the crops in the ground. Didn't get to turn her loose that weekend, and I believe it was the following weekend when I came home. We loaded up and took that little dog all by herself to the woods, turned her loose, and she busted out of that little patch woods, headed to the next one. And Dad and I were crossing this woven wire fence to hightail it across the field to that next woods. I heard the gunshots, 2 shots, and that dog yipped, and that was all we heard. Dad I just remember my heart sinking like it's never sunk before at that instant. And Dad says, "Oh my, what are we going to do now?" I said, "We're going over there." I was a young college athlete. I was wrestling in college, and I was, 19 years old or something, or maybe, probably 19, and just full of testosterone. And I was fighting mad. We pulled in this guy's driveway, and Dad says, "You sit in the truck." Okay, you're my dad. He went up there and talked to him, and the story goes is, "So I didn't know it was your dog," and all that, and okay, whatever. We left, like we used to do. We left our coat in the dog box where we turned out that night. Didn't see the dog. And I remember it was about 3 weeks later, a neighbor stopped by, and Bob, he pulled in and talked to my dad and says, "I found Bill's dog. She had a hole in the side of her the size of a volleyball and full of maggots." And he says, I took care of her. And, Dad told me, and I was just fighting mad. I says, "You should have took that dog back to that guy. And if he wanted to shoot her so bad, he could shoot her now." But it broke me again. I mean, I lost my spirit, and I took my interest was just kind of shattered. I went along with my dad hunting some during that time, but I didn't have a passion for the sport. Dad was getting into the walker dogs and was doing a little bit of competition hunting and asked me to go along with him a few times. Well, father-son thing, and he was proud of his dogs. My next youngest brother was in college too, and he wanted to show me what dogs could do, and I went along some, and then it just didn't excite me. Like I say, I was a little sidetracked, beer and girls at that time, but then in 1988, a heavy tractor weight fell on my dad's foot, and he busted his foot up real bad, and he couldn't walk very good, and he got himself a team of mules. And Dad always had a passion for horses and equine, and he tells the story about when they switched from horses to tractor power on the farm, and that was a real hard thing for him. It was really disappointing when he came home from school and the horses were sold. So we always had some horses around, but the kids were out of 4-H was dwindling down for us at the time, and Dad got himself his own team of mules, and Dad was a trainer. He trained dogs. We raised English Shepherds since he was 12 years. Dad was 12 years old. He trained those dogs to work cattle, trained our hounds, trained 6 kids, managed employees, and a lot of time there was training involved in that. We raised a lot of vegetables on the farm through the 60s and 70s, and had a lot of migrant labor, and so he managed a lot of people. Dad managed with a heavier hand than I thought was necessary, and I observed that and didn't want to be exactly like my dad, but we got through it. I hunted with Dad, some off the mules. He really wanted me to go. He really wanted me to enjoy it. He would saddle the mule up, and he'd put the saddles away when we got home. So I just had to leave and go home and go to bed. But at that time, Dad was taking kind of a back seat in the farming operation. So I had to get up and manage the farm the next morning. So that's kind of the way things worked out. But as he got into the walkers, we got Patchwoods there. And those walkers traveled. They really moved. And I remember turning those dogs loose, and you just didn't know where they were going to be. And that just wasn't me. Like we talked about, the traffic and the paved roads and the anxiety that comes along with knowing your dog's crossing a busy road, and it just wasn't enjoyable. And that's kind of the whole thing. I took a back seat from serious coon hunting. My parents always thought that you should learn to do things, and sometimes they'll take a back burner, and they come back to you later in life if you have those skills. So I knew how to coon hunt. I knew how to train dogs, but it took a back burner to me. Like I say, I lost the fire. I was taking over the family farm. I was newly married and had a couple of stepsons, and so coon hunting took a back seat until about. It was just before I turned 50 years old. My nephew got a dog, and I thought I wanted to go hunting with him some. And the same fellow that found my dog after she was shot says, there's a guy down the road that's getting out of coon hunting. He's got some dogs in the kennel. And I went down there to see him, and he had 2 Plotts in the kennel. He had and I didn't know what a Plott dog was. He had 2 Plotts, a little female and a big male. And I just had knee surgery, and I'll take that little female. And it lit a whole new fire in me, the experience with that dog. She has such a good handle on her. I remember turning her loose in the yard. Called her Baby Girl. Turn her loose in the yard, and she'd get a couple hundred yards away. And I'd say, Baby Girl, come. And she would run so hard, run so fast, slide like a horse on her haunches right up to you, right in front of you. And just to have a handle on a dog like that, a dog that was obedient, and she was a coon dog. Oh, man, she was a coon dog. In another tragic story, we only hunted for a few weeks that season, and she got killed on the road. But that was a devastating morning for me. I picked her up and I took her home. I didn't even know it had happened. And then I took her home and went and told my dad about what happened, because I knew I was looking for some consolation or somebody to sympathize with me. And I told my dad what happened, and just as I was telling him the story, the doorbell rang at his house, and a gentleman came and said that he was the one that hit my dog on the road. And I shook his hand, and I told him I appreciated him coming by to tell me and manning up for it. And he says, "Oh, by the way, I just got back from the body shop and the insurance adjuster, and you're going to owe me $1,200 to fix my car."
Oh, no.
No big deal. It'll be on your homeowner's policy. So he left, and my dad just says, when it rains, it pours. And I immediately called my insurance agent, and he says, "No, actually, it won't be on your homeowners. It'll be on your farm policy. And I can't tell you what to do, but I wouldn't file that claim."
Yeah.
So I got to
make
dig in
your
my
rates
pocket.
go up, probably. Yeah.
So I was pretty broken. Took a little break for a couple weeks and thought about just being done again. And early days of the internet, I did a Google search for. I looked at her papers. All I had was her puppy papers. I wasn't really chasing anything. Didn't have any big dreams at the time. Just wanted to pleasure hunt. I looked at her papers and I saw that her sire was River Bluff Brindle Cowboy Up. I did a little Google search, found a ad or a web page that Bill Reddick had, and phone number on there. And I called, and Craig Groy answered the phone and said he had a couple of pups out of Cowboy, and they were available. And so I headed out there, and I ended up picking up a sister to that, a half sister to my baby girl dog. And I got her started, no problem. She was really turning it on. I got the fire going in me again. And as I thought about the situation and things that had transpired, nobody had ever seen baby girl go except for me. I always hunted her alone, and decided that I needed to. She either needed a new home where she would get some exposure, or I needed to learn to competition hunt. I'd never been to a competition hunt, never saw a rule book, didn't know any rules. But and my dad had not encouraged me to do that.
Let me ask you a question here, kind of in keeping with our title of this podcast, Hunting Plotts in a Walker World. When you reached out to buy puppies, did you consider other breeds at that time, or were you just so fixated on the Plotts?
I was fixated on what I'd see, not necessarily the Plott breed. I was fixated on what the traits I saw in that specific dog, and I had never seen them before. And a switch flip that said that was something, that handle and that personality and that bond, that hound owner or handler bond was something special within the Plotts. I've been around a lot of dogs. I just never seen that in a hound before. So that's kind of that's the time that started me.
Okay, so you experienced this and recognized it rather than hearing it from someone else. Because we hear this a lot. Plotts are different. Plotts can be one-man dogs. It's different with a Plott. So you saw this and decided you wanted more of that. Am I right?
Absolutely. To be honest, I wasn't that engaged in the coon hunting world. I wasn't taking the magazines at the time. And my first Plott was the first Plott I ever saw. The first time I'd ever even heard about Plotts. And this was a whole new experience, this relationship and this type of dog and this. I mean, I didn't care that they were Plotts. I mean, I wanted more of what I had. That experience energized me.
Yeah. Well, for me, real briefly, my dad's first experience with Plott was when he was coon hunting with a great black and tan, and two Plott females were on that hunt, and they started a bear. The black and tan did, but the black and tan came back. The Plotts took the bear on, caught the bear. They lost the bear in the dogs in a snowstorm. But that lit the fire for bear hunting in my dad. And what he saw out of those 2 Plott females made him want to have a Plott because they, showed him that they could catch a bear. The things you're talking about came along later for us. That Plott personality and all wasn't the impetus to begin with. But as we began to have these dogs down through the years and all, we, began to realize what you saw right away.
And those traits, those characteristics, they inspired me, they motivated me. But then it was, I don't know, I can't even explain it, but I've always been a little bit different. And
we noticed that, didn't we, Alex?
that is for sure.
No, seriously, go ahead.
A point in my life, and probably while I was in college or shortly after, I decided to embrace that difference. And this was just an opportunity to do that. I remember one of the first hunts I went to, actually, I think first or second hunt I went to, Luke Stark was along, and he was our guide and judge that night. And he said he was a little spooked by me because he hadn't hunted with a Plott in a long time. And he thought that a guy brought a Plott to a hunt, he was going to have something special. I remember the first time I went to Liberty Center to a hunt, and Jeff Perdue was our guide and judge, and somebody called and he answered the phone. He says, "You're not going to believe this. I'm on a cast with a Plott, a red bone, a black and tan, and a blue tick."
A Duke's mixture right there.
Yeah, didn't even have a walker on the cast. So, but I don't know. And it was a great opportunity for me because people hadn't experienced hunting with Plotts, and I had a good one. And, there weren't many Plotts in the area, and I got kind of known as the Plott man. The next connection was kind of another Google search. So I had this young dog, and I wanted to find, somebody to develop a relationship with in the Plott breed. And I Googled Plott hounds in my area, and came up with the Millennium Magic Plotts. And I made a phone call and talked to John Johnson, and he invited me up, and Stephen King came over. He introduced me to Stephen King, and we went coon hunting. And that was kind of a humbling moment. Sat around that kitchen table with John Johnson.
I've been there.
And we went hunting that night and came back. We didn't hunt a long time that night, but Stephen was hunting his Sugar Babe dog, and Sadie, they were within a few months of the same age, and came back. And John, he kind of sized me up sitting around that kitchen table, and he says, "Why don't you send Jasmine home with Bill, Stephen?" And I was about in tears, thinking that a man would send a good dog home with me and take that chance, especially after what I'd been through with a dog getting killed on the road. And, boy, if you're willing to do that, I'd sure like to have her. And Jasmine was a really nice dog, and she was bred at the time, and they wanted her back. They raised a litter of pups, and they offered to sell her to me, and I bought her, and she ended up being Lazarus's dam then.
Right.
So that's how that connection was made.
I got you. Well, back in the day when I started, you talked about being an anomaly there in Ohio, having the only Plott and all. We were kind of that way too. The Plotts hadn't gotten popular in West Virginia at that point. The oldest Plott breeder alive at that time was Isaiah Kidd, and he was there, but he wasn't into competition hunting or anything. He was strictly a bear hunter, and by the time I really got to know Mr. Kidd, he was already nearing 80 or his early 80s. But I wanted to go to night hunts, and I wanted to hunt the dogs and do bench shows and all that stuff. So, I imagine to a degree I got that designation, in my area as well. But I can well remember back in those days, most people were a little afraid of Plotts. They'd heard a lot of rumors and all that these are bear dogs, hog dogs. They're vicious. They'll take your dog off a tree, yada, yada. I often wondered if that was maybe because of brindle color and most bulldogs are brindle or what. But there was that stigma about a Plott dog when I was a kid, and first started out. And of course, that's all been dispelled,
Sure. It's been dispelled, but the rumors carry on.
Yeah. Well, old wives' tales and stuff like that. We have, what is it, the flat earth people?
Takes all kinds to fill the freeway.
That's for sure. Well, Bill, okay, so you got Jasmine. So how old was she when that happened?
I think she was like 6.5 years old when I got her there. And I had her, and she'd raised several pups for the Millennium Magic crew and Johnson's. And I decided that I might want to raise a litter of pups. And I actually contacted Craig Graw about it. And there was some, I don't know, there must have been some sort of conflict between Bill Reddick and the Millennium Magic people, because he just said he made a promise he wouldn't breed to a gravedigger dog. So I explored other options, and I met this gentleman by Alex Carter out in Missouri. And it just so happened that Alex had a lot of Kansas Sizzle and Heat breeding in his kennel. And come to find out, his heat breeding came from a gentleman named Kevin Gervler. And Kevin, I think he graduated high school about 88, and shortly after he got out of high school, he was able to breed directly to Kansas Sizzle and Heat. He developed a relationship with Jim Cannon, and
Heat won the world championship, in 1988 there in your home state, Mount Gilead, Ohio is where he won it. And so he was getting some of the Heat dog right when he was at his peak.
At the peak of his fame.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that was kind of exciting to go out there and meet Kevin and have an opportunity to bring some of that back. And I was so green to all this. I didn't even know what I was doing. I'd heard that he had won the world hunt, but I didn't know that I was line breeding on Garrison's Brindle Ranger. And because that's what a lot of the Millennium Magic dogs were doing, some things just fell in place for me. And it was just a great opportunity, and I was excited to do it. So that was the first litter of pups I raised out of Jasmine, was bred to that dog. They turned out to be Coon dogs, but nothing exceptional. And then I had seen this dog online. This fella, they were at the Illinois, Wisconsin line. This Josh By had a dog that was out of Cowboy Up, and I thought, I'm going to breed Sadie to that dog someday. And we communicated and kind of had a verbal agreement to do that. And about a year later, I saw an ad, and I'm reading this ad for this dog. And I got down to the bottom of the ad, and I realized, that's Lenko Valentine. That's the dog I'm going to breed to. And he's got it for sale. Well, I had to buy him. So yeah. I went out there and bought Link, and to make a long story short, brought Link home and bred her to Jasmine. And that's where the litter of pups came from.
I got you. Well, we're going to get into where Alex enters the picture here in just a little bit, but he's been very patient over here, which is not one of Alex's virtues.
No, he's been a trooper here so far.
We've been picking on Alex, but
for a couple days.
Alex can take it.
It's been a rough
weekend.
weekend.
In fact, he can dish it out better than he can take it out there. Well, pretty even keel there,
Yeah.
maybe. But we definitely want to talk to Alex. But, okay, so for our listeners, and we'll get into that, Lazarus his claim to fame was winning Plott Days in 2021,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
And to win Plott Days, there's an award, and I mentioned this gentleman earlier, Isaiah Kidd. The Isaiah Kidd Award is for the high-scoring dog for 3 nights combined, and they take the top cast winners first. In other words, if you've got 3 cast wins with 25 points each and somebody else has a 1,000-point cast win but didn't win his cast the other 2 nights or whatever, those 3 cast wins with 25 are going to be the winner.
Yes.
So the idea is to win your cast all 3 nights if you can. When I won the opposite sex back in 1997, I only had 2 cast wins out of 3. So it's pretty tough, and all the best Plotts in the country are there at Plott Days competing for that award. So when Lazarus won that, it became big news. Right.
Absolutely.
I really didn't, I had heard about Lazarus and his littermate Joe from my good friend Gordy, your uncle.
Yes,
Alex.
sir. Yes, sir.
And all. But, that's when things kind of, in a positive way, hit the fan. But I want to talk about those puppies when they came along and that period of time between, being.
Sure. I'll try not to drag it out for an hour here, but
right. Don't do like I do. Okay.
It's kind of a story, and it's kind of a touching story. So we had this litter of puppies, and my wife calls me one day. The pups are, the first day, it was a difficult labor, I guess. Jasmine just had a hard time. It was about a 24-hour labor, and she was exhausted. And I took her to see Doc Kelly up to Addison, Michigan. And he says that she's going to be all right. He gave her a shot of penicillin and oxytocin. He says, that's not normal procedure for every litter of pups, but he says she needs some good nutrition and she'll be fine. And so we came home, and she was good for the next couple of days. And then my wife calls me about the 5th day and says, you got to get home right now. Something's wrong with Jasmine, and I can see her stomach growing and she's foaming at the mouth. I rushed home and got on the phone describing her symptoms to several veterinarians, and nobody would look at her. They said, you need to get her to Michigan State. And finally got this Dr. Spees, who we had a long relationship with, but hadn't done much business with him in recent years, said he'd bring her in. And he says, she's got a twisted gut. And he says, you need to take her to Michigan State. He said, you want us to get an estimate? I said, yeah. So he called up there and told him, he says, $8,000 to $12,000, you'll lose the pups, and she's only got about a 50% chance of survival, and likely she'll twist her gut again. And I says, well, is there anything you can do? And he says, well, we can put a needle in her and try to let some air off and maybe buy you a few more days. And I said, well, let's do that. So we did that, brought her home, and I knew just from raising cattle that when animals bloat like that, you have to keep them active because it helps them to pass that gas. So we were doing the best we could to keep her active, and I don't know, it was the day or 2 later, I came out. I had a young fellow helping me do chores. It's Nathan Bookup. He was helping me do chores. I had a wedding that day. Came out, and Jasmine's just laying in the doghouse, her head down. She's basically unresponsive. I told Nathan, I says, you do the chores, I'm going to go dig a grave. And I got the backhoe, dug a grave, came back, and she wasn't in the doghouse. And I says to Nathan, I called him on the phone. I didn't know where he was. I figured she died, and he put her in the truck so I wouldn't have to deal with it. And called Nathan. I says, where's Jasmine? He says, I'm walking her around. and
wow.
So he walked her for about the next 4 days, about 12 hours out of every 24. I mean, he walked her and walked her and walked her for me, and I owe a lot to him. But eventually, on about the 5th day after that, in the morning, we found her dead. And so my wife took over raising these orphan pups. She raised the entire litter, didn't lose any pups about 10 days old. She put a lot of effort and work into it, but Lazarus is named after his mother, Jasmine, who died and rose from the dead to take care of her pups. So I could have what I have today.
That is a great story. Unfortunately, with a sad ending.
It's a sad ending, but it's a joyous ending.
Is it really sad?
It is. Yeah, because Lazarus came forth.
Yes.
They all did.
Yeah. So okay, so we got Lazarus. How many puppies?
There was 2 females and 3 males, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you kept 2 of the males, right?
I kept 2 males. My nephew kept a female. There was a female that went to Louisiana and came back and ended up going to a guy in Wisconsin, and that fella died, and his roommate got it. It ended up being a house dog. And there was a young boy that got one at Plott days, and it was J.D. Hasty got this pup, and he was gone bear hunting, and the pup got out and got killed on the road. So, and then my nephew's Annie dog was poisoned and killed. So, I mean, there's a lot of tragedy goes along with the sport.
Well, exactly what I was going to say there. There are just so many dangers. The survival rate really on these coonhounds and bear hounds or whatever is really pretty remarkable considering, what they have to face, on a daily or nightly basis, not only hunting dangerous game at certain times, but highways and pitfalls. Imagine going full speed in the middle of the night through. I mean, I don't know the science on what a dog sees at night. I've never really studied that or tried to deal with it, but their eyesight at night must be amazing, or they're using their nose and navigating by their nose.
I don't know how they keep their vision. I mean, you would think they get their eyes poked with the briars and prickers.
Exactly. Yeah. It's amazing. So you kept two pups, 2 males.
Yes,
Joe
sir.
is the other one, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you still have Joe, I believe, right?
Yes. Joe was actually my pick of the litter. Lazarus was kind of an outlier. He was obviously the alpha of the litter. He picked on every pup in the litter, and so I'm thinking Joe's my dog, but I want to keep Lazarus. In my mind, I see this dog. I'm thinking, if I can manage that energy, if I can channel that energy, if I can just keep it in line, this dog could really be special. But it's gonna take some work. It's not something I can just lay back and get him out of the kennel when he's 6 months old and then say, oh, he needs a little more time. This dog's going to take some daily guidance. So that's kind of how that came about. Joe fell out of a tree when he was 6 months old. I remember walking in that tree and think, what are those big eyes up there? And just about then he fell out and he broke his sternum. And he didn't bark for a couple of months. And he finally got a little bit of a real soft bark. And I gave him to a fella for that said he wasn't interested in competition hunting. And he had him for about 3 months, and Joe's voice started coming back. And he decided he wanted to sell that dog, but he was mad at me, I guess, and wouldn't sell it to me. And this fella in Indiana named Alex Recker was interested in buying him. And except Alex was in a little financial pinch. So you know what I did? I loaned Alex the money to buy Joe.
He figured out a way to buy Joe.
I got you. So that's how Alex and Bill.
That was kind of our first connection.
Bill's story started, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Alex has Joe, and you were doing well with him. You were really excited about him.
Yeah, we did. We won a cast at Lighters Ford, Indiana, and then we went down to Autumn Oaks, and it was my first Autumn Oaks, and I was so excited. And we went in and we scored 1,000 plus with no minus and no circle, and didn't win our cast. We lost to the dog that won the whole dang thing, and I had guided it, and that was my first big hunt I had been in, and I was just I was heartbroken. I thought, man, I really got something here, and that dog put that last coon on me, and I was treed. I was treed, and if I had a coon, I won, and it was the only tree we circled, or would have circled all night.
But Alex was doing a great job with him, and then you know how these Plott dogs are. Sometimes they stray a little bit. Alex is having a little trouble with Joe with possums after that, and he was living in the house with Alex. They had really bonded.
Well, he was a house dog from the man before me. I put him outside, he wouldn't hunt for me. Bring him inside, he'd start hunting again.
In other words, Bill had spoiled, or Cindy probably had spoiled
from birth.
Before. Well, you know, and this is not going to be at all about the pup that I have, but his story was similar to Lazarus.
Yes, sir.
Because his mother also died of a twisted stomach at 12 days or so?
About that, yeah. I don't remember exactly the number of days.
Cindy stepped in and nursed those puppies back. Was it the practice she got with Lazarus litter, you think?
Well, I mean, we're definitely more experienced. She was pretty confident, and we didn't have 100% success on this litter. I don't know why, but you know, we learned a lot about milk replacer, and the real answer to that is fresh, unpasteurized goat milk is our go-to. And we had a little trouble sourcing some fresh goat milk immediately, and used some goat milk replacer the first couple of days. And
now, was this with Lazarus litter or with Fever's litter?
With the litter that Fever was out of. Yes, we kind of got behind the 8 ball on that and didn't have the goat milk. But I'll let you in on a little secret. We've got goat milk in the freezer right now. We're prepared if that ever happens again.
Well, that's good to know. And you heard it here on the Gone to the Dogs podcast. We try to give useful information. So if you have orphan pups, unpasteurized goat milk.
And you know, there's, for a few dollars, you can be prepared for these things. But buy a feeding tube and do a little research or learning on how to use a feeding tube.
I want to interrupt you there because that's intimidating to me. Even I've had puppies that I've had to bottle feed, you know, and the thing that we were always concerned about was getting liquid down in their lungs and all that stuff. But cramming a tube down a puppy that you're holding in the palm of your hand is an intimidating thing for me.
Well, it's almost a 2-person project. I mean, one of us holds the pup, another, and you need to know which side of the throat to put the tube on, and you need to let the puppy swallow the tube. And we mark the tube with a permanent marker so we know about how much we need to get down in them. And if you feel resistance, you know, I guess I have a little bit of a feel for it because I'm in the dog breeding business with the artificial insemination stuff. So I have a little bit of a feel when I feel that resistance to where it just I don't know, those senses are awakened in my hands, I guess.
Well, to the listeners, I'm sure there's plenty of videos on YouTube or whatever on tube feeding puppies, but that's something you definitely need to do if you're going to raise the litter pups. I mean, know how to do, because you could possibly get in that position.
And you know, you can order a tube online for, you know, $2. And if you're not prepared and you lose your female and you can't, you know, sometimes you just can't get it. You need to feed those pups within the hour when you lose their mother. You can't be horsing around for 2 days to order something. So,
well, we chased that rabbit around the barn there, but I think that's good, useful information to anybody, you know, that's dealing with pups. Okay. So, Joe and Lazarus, you've got these 2 pups. What was the starting process as far as hunting?
There's another one, Hawk, Chris Matney down in Indiana.
Oh, that's right.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, in fact, what a tree dog, man. I love listening to his videos.
I've been fortunate, been a part of championing each one of these each one of the males out of this litter, and Hawk was the most recent to finish. I went down there for the UKC Christmas Classic at Wayne County Coon Hunters, and they had. I took Hawk down there, and they had a doubleheader, and I was able to go and double Hawk up, and got his 4th and 5th wins to make him night champion. He's a nice outfit.
Okay. I guess I can throw this question in right now because I don't want to lose it. Are Lazarus, Joe, and Hawk similar?
No,
They're different.
all three of them.
They're all individuals.
They are 3. I would tell you there's 3 different breeds of dog.
I see. Okay, well, let's go back to starting these puppies. What was the not so much the process, but what did you see as you started to work with them?
A lot of drive. These pups, we treat Coon. I think about 5 months old on a snow-covered afternoon during the day. Lazarus and Joe treated their first Coon. It was just really exciting. I have some video and photos of that day. That Nathan was walking with me in the woods. We just took the dogs for a walk, and then they treat on this Coon in January, and it was just they were automatic. But what was so exciting was these dogs. They had the drive like an experienced dog. Like you just cut them loose and they would go. I mean, they weren't going a long ways, but when you're cutting a 5 or 6 month old pup loose and it's going 300 or 400 yards, and you're glad you got a tracking collar on it because you don't know what's next. I mean, it was exciting.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a characteristic of the Lazarus dogs that I've seen. This fever dog has that drive, that desire. When you turn him loose, he's going to go make something happen somewhere,
Absolutely.
Very, very determined. People ask me about him and what is it, how would you describe him? And to look for a word, I guess there's no better than determined. He's just darn determined to do whatever that's out there, for him to do. All right. So,
if I can interrupt for a second, Steve, I see a lot of people, especially in the Plott breed, they get upset about dogs that don't have good kennel manners or pace in the yard. And I know that some dogs get called because it wears on a man's nerves, and that's not what they expect out of the Plott breed. But I've learned to tolerate a little bit of that because I guess my thought is that I don't want that dog that's going to be under my feet. And that dog got a little bit of ants in the pants, maybe a little bit like Alex. That dog's going to get out and get busy and get going. And my analogy is that kid in second grade that's falling asleep in class, he's probably not going to end up being a doctor or a lawyer. It's going to be that one with the pencil jabbing that girl next to him that ends up being the doctor or a lawyer. And that's kind of, when you go from strictly pleasure hunting to wanting something that's going to be able to compete in these night hunts, I think you want something with a little bit of energy, a little bit of fire, a little bit of ants.
Well, this is probably a simple analogy, but if you watch the Kentucky Derby, as everybody tends to do, when they've got that horse out there getting ready to put him in the gate and they're leading around, and it's all that jockey can do plus a groom or whatever to hold that horse back, and get him in position to go. Now, if you come out there leading, the old gray mare,
right?
She's leading and she's being a real lady, but she's not going to win the Kentucky Derby. And we have, again, with Fever, he's that kind of dog. He drives Mark nuts sometimes, and it's just his energy and his desire to want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something you need to manage, it's just one of those things you need to understand.
So basically you're saying, if you can bring these dogs inside.
Oh, absolutely. We do.
Yeah. But if you're a kind of a person that every little thing a dog does irritates you, you're probably not going to like these dogs that much. You
Yes.
think?
I guess, man, when you talk about bringing a dog inside, that's one of the things that excited me about my experience with the Plotts, where they had so much energy, so much excitement, so much drive outside. But when you come in the door of the house, they just settle right down. It's like telling a kid, use your inside voice. And
The example you guys will remember probably Mark's friend Brad Hyatt, the bear hunter from there in North Carolina. His dog, little crossbred Plott female. She looks like a Plott. Jingo. She won the dash race. Now, this dash race is what would you say that distance is? It's over 100 yards.
I would say it's a couple hundred. Anyway.
Couple hundred yards. And they run the 4-dog heats and all. And she won the whole thing overall, beat every dog in that whole thing, which was 20-some heats. But what did she do? He brings her in here in this nice cabin that you provided for us, Bill. And she's laying on the couch, sleeping with his grandson, just as calm as she can be. And it's really unusual. But she just was that perfect example of what you were talking about.
Yeah. Just got to switch.
Ultimate performance, and then at the same time, couch potato.
Yeah. That's how can you not enjoy a dog that, is able to be that kind of a companion? I mean, I wish I could turn Alex off once in a while.
Boy, Alex, you're really taking it a lot on the chin, and we need to. Well, I want to get the story to the point where Alex really gets involved.
Okay, let me lead to that here. So as we talk about all this, there are moments in our lives that change the course of everything, and saving those pups, the dog, baby girl getting killed on the road, the Google search, and so many things just change the whole course of things. Oh, the one thing I was going to mention earlier. So baby girl, I never registered her. I was on her puppy papers. The next dog, Sadie, I got the 5 generation that comes standard from UKC.
Well, it used to be 3.
Okay, maybe it's the 3.
Yeah, I think 3 is the basic. You can get the 4 and all the way
so
up.
I got the 3 generation on Sadie. I regretted it every day since, and every dog I've owned since then, I've got the 7 generation on.
Right.
Because studying those pedigrees has become more important.
Yeah, real quick, you hear these guys say, papers don't tree coons, papers don't tree bears. But that's a tool, a tremendous tool to a breeder to be able to look back and see these crosses just right in front of you,
So little things change the whole course of things. Alex had a little trouble with Joe. He was very defeated.
He quit on me. We went from day one, tree and coon, when I got him from that man over in
down to Findlay.
In Findlay, Ohio, yeah. I went over and picked him up and took him back to Indiana, and I hunted his pads off. I had him in the woods every day. We went and did some winning with him a little bit, and one day he quit. And then he started treeing possums. And he for 2 months he didn't tree a coon. And my hand started hurting, and I was just getting heavy-handed with him. And I called Bill after hunting one night. I'll never forget it. I was sitting in the Defiance Walmart parking lot, and I had cried. And then I called him, and I can't do it no more. I'm going to kill this dog. I'm going to kill this dog. You got to come get him. I'll give him to you. I'll give him back to you. Just come get him. I'm sick of him. I can't deal with it no more.
I knew Alex was broken when he called. He just was
I loved that
defeated.
Dog. And I sent him over to Bill's, and
we worked with him a little while. I hunted him a little bit, and I sent him to my nephew, and he hunted him a little bit. And he was, I think he was treeing squirrels, and he just wasn't the dog we expected. And after my experience and Alex's experience and my nephew Todd's experience, I said, I'm going to take this dog to the vet, and I'm going to get him tested for for Lyme disease, tested for heartworm, tested his thyroid, and they come back his thyroid was low. And so I started him on thyroid medication. Todd had him, keeping him at his place. And he would be hot and cold. Come to find out, Todd wasn't being maybe as faithful as he needed to be with that thyroid medication. I brought the dog home, and he gets his half a pill in the morning, half a pill in the evening, and he's the rock star that he was bred to be now. So,
that's really amazing, and I won't talk about it, but I had that experience too. And unfortunately, the dog, of my experience, was not kept steadily on the medication either. But I think the people that have him now are going to do it right. So we'll see what happens. But that can be a big disappointment, no doubt.
And not to change the course of the story, but it is kind of the same story so I'm a little bit involved in the canine reproduction business, and the people I was having trouble getting a litter of pups out of Sadie. And so when I was training for the semen business, I talked to the people about hormones a little bit and told them what was going on with Sadie, and they said that thyroid is more than just a number on the blood test. They said you got to look for the symptoms, and if the dog is lazy during the daytime, gaining a little weight, hormonal type activity where she was getting really out of sync with her constant focus before her heat cycle and during and after her heat cycle was lasting a long time, just very hormonal. They said, it's more than a number. See if your vet will put her on a low dose of thyroid medication. We did, and a few weeks later, we had a litter of pups. She came in heat, and we were able to breed her and had a litter of pups. So, thyroid is more than that. So, I guess back to our story. Little things that changed the whole course. COVID happened. I got COVID, and I struggled with it. I was a long time bouncing back from it. Alex's uncle Gordy wanted me to hunt the Peach Classic. I wanted to go down there, but I just didn't feel that I was going to be strong enough to hunt a 2-hour hunt. Gordy says, I think I can get you a handler. That's where Alex came in.
I see. Yeah.
It was just supposed to be for that event. I was just supposed to go down and
So you
handle for
went
the
down
Peach
to
Classic.
Georgia. The Charlie Daniels. Well, we shouldn't make that connection. Who was it that went down to Georgia in that song?
I couldn't tell.
The devil went down to
The
Georgia.
devil.
The red devil.
Yeah,
I wasn't going to say it.
It's Copper Top here, Alex. He's got this great hair, man, and great red beard there. It's cool. Goatee. Yeah,
Alex and I
ahead.
went down there, and Alex was going through a little bit of a tough time in his life then, and was looking for a place to live. And I told him that I had a mobile home. Wasn't any Taj Mahal, but he ought to come and look at it when we got home. And he came to look at it and moved in, and he's been working on the farm for me and helping with dogs for a year now.
Yeah.
Well, a couple weeks will be.
Yeah. But, Alex and I have a pretty good partnership. We're two different individuals, but we both have something that the other one needs. Alex has got the youth, the drive. He's got what it takes to argue with these guys in these competitions. That's when they try to put one over on him.
I try to be nice.
I can't imagine that. Has there ever been an argument on
Okay,
a competition?
maybe he doesn't argue.
I don't argue. I just tell you.
He'll dispute your call.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But I'm 60 years old, and I'm not as young and strong as I once was. But I've been blessed in my career. I've been blessed with some good dogs and some great opportunities. And Alex and I come together, and we kind of fill each other's gaps. I've got I've got some experience in managing people, I guess.
Sure.
And like I say, opportunities presented themselves, and I was able to be coached as a manager. I mean, it started out way back in high school. I was the captain of the wrestling team, captain of the football team, president of the FFA. In the college, I was the captain of the wrestling team and president of my fraternity. And I've spent 20 years on the soil and water board. In the public sector, I learned some new skills in the public sector versus the private sector. So, I mean, and I've managed people on the farm. So I kind of keep Alex at bay once in a while.
But are you telling me, despite all of these leadership roles, you're able to really lead coon hunters?
Well, one
was
that was something all my career of 33 years I never quite mastered.
No, I don't attempt to lead coon hunters, but I think it's important to look at people, especially people that work for you, work with you, and understand their strengths, their weaknesses.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And prop them up where they need propped up, and give them a little rope where they can take it.
Well, let's get Alex's side of the story. Okay.
Right.
We know you're the boss. Okay?
Do I have to be quiet now?
You're the guy that writes the checks. Okay. So we need you. Okay. Like I say, I really enjoyed this terrific cabin that you found for us here, about 10 miles out from the grounds this weekend. We've had a ball. But Alex, okay, so you go down to Georgia and now I think your uncle handled Lazarus down there. Was that the
year
same
before?
Oh, the year before.
That was the year before. He was only 16 months old then. So
how old was Lazarus when you took over the reins, so to speak?
I would say
just turned 3.
So you handled him at Plott days when he won the Isaiah Kid Award?
I did,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
I had gotten him in right after the Peach Classic.
Okay, end of March.
I took him home at the end of March, and don't get me wrong, Bill had a very, very nice dog. He was a very nice coon dog. I needed to push him a little bit and turn that into harness it. He was just some things I needed him to stop doing and get a little more independent and really focus and work on things. And I lived in Indiana, and I lived right on Salamone, and right there at Salamone, it's rough hunting, but there's a good coon population and a lot of good dogs come out of that area. And we hunted on that lake every night. Every night. I was working second shift, went in 3, got off at 11:30. I could be home, grab the dogs, put a light on, and get in the woods by midnight. I only lived a few miles from where I worked. And that summer, every single night, no matter, we were in that woods getting ready for Plott days. I knew I had a dog that had a chance.
All right.
And
interrupt real quick. These guys talking about getting ready for a hunt. Essentially, I mean, there's a lot of guys that believe, well, I just go to hunt. I'm a coon hunter. I go to a hunt on weekends. That's what I do. I don't, I do other things during the week.
There are those types, and that's fine too. They are coon hunters.
It's an old saw, as they say, an old adage that, the money gets made through the week. They just hand out the checks on the weekend, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, isn't that pretty much for our listeners out there that want to get into competition?
I know some guys. There are guys out there that don't have the hunting or the availability. They just don't have the ground to hunt if they don't have state land available. Some of these guys go to competition hunts just to have somewhere to hunt, and it's a terrible thing for it. But I got to respect those guys. If I didn't have the ground to hunt, I'd pay $35 to go hunt somewhere, even if it just was for an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay, you got Lazarus and you hunted him. I
thought he was ready. Let me take that back. we went to after that we went to a local hunt after about a month. I drove back over, and I wanted to see if where he was at, and we took him to a local hunt there. And in the early round, the dog beat me because it was my fault. I had done all this talking on Lazarus, and then I mess up, and I miss it early round. But we got it late round, and that made him night champion. And then we didn't hunt him again until, we did. We hunted a couple blue tick days, walker days are the two that are before Plott days. And I had a double cast win at blue tick days that year or at walker days, and a single cast win at blue tick days.
Is that the blue tick hunt at Ashland, Ohio?
No, that's the spring hunt.
You're talking actually BBO blue tick days, National Blue Tick,
which just happened to be at Wayne County Coon Hunters in Indiana that year.
So Plott days then was at where?
Bellevue,
Michigan.
Yes, sir.
My old home club.
Close enough that we could almost call it, we were hunting pretty much our home territory.
It was about 50 miles from me, but it was the best club around in the general area. There was a pretty good club at Marcellus, but
I like all them Michigan
Wyatt,
clubs.
Northern Indiana, those good. Yeah. So anyway, just give me the Cliff Notes version of Plott days.
Plott days, we went in Thursday night, and it was a rough situation. Our guide, he wasn't a guide. It was somebody called, and he said, "Yeah, I'll show him where to hunt." And he dropped our cast off, and he said, "Go through here. It's 2 miles to the back of it." We cut our dogs. Dogs come right back, and we go in. And we walk 30 feet through the trees, and we're standing on a blacktop road. It was only 30 feet wide. And that guy had left. He was gone.
Oh, my.
So we called Stephen King. Stephen King came over. He was guiding the other cast. I happened to have his phone number. He came and got it fixed up, won that cast.
Okay.
Come back in Friday night, had put up a 575, fairly good score. Oh, man, we're going into Saturday, and we got a shot at this. Triple cast win guarantees it for us. But if it doesn't, there's
what's Ed on the score.
Ed Choates Choates, I don't remember which dog it was, but Ed Choates could catch us, and another guy. And that didn't happen. We were lucky, and we came in with a 550 score on the Saturday. And we're able to take home the Isaiah Kidd Award, which we were pretty proud of.
The special thing about that is you hunted 3 nights, no circle, no minus points, all plus points in 3 nights of hunting.
That's
in
awesome.
Michigan in June.
Yeah. Well, we were finding the coons, that's for sure, because it's the leaves are out up there. Mm-hmm. But one thing about Michigan, there's coons there.
Yes, there are.
Of course, you live in an area where there's coons too.
Absolutely.
But I always guided the cast, whenever they needed me to guide, and I'd either bring them all the way back home, or I would have the president send them to me there, and I'd wait at the local McDonald's, and they'd show up, and I'd take them hunting. But those were the days, best coon hunting days of my life, the years I lived in Michigan.
That Saturday night at Plott days, Miss Kitty was another dog in my cast on that Saturday night cast. And there was 4 dogs in the cast. I honestly couldn't tell you who the other 2 were. Not to be disrespectful to them. It was Eddie Anderson and I back and forth all night. And
she's a nice dog.
She's a very, very nice dog.
Big Eddie from Kentucky,
yes, sir,
is now the president of National Coonhound Association. He's the new pres.
Yes, sir.
And Eddie's been a solid
great
guy.
Man.
A lot of good dogs down through the years. Well, we've kind of, between a couple of fits and starts there, we're about 55 minutes here, and then we had another 15 or so before. So So we're looking at like an hour and 10 minutes in here.
So we're wearing people out, you're saying?
Well, we try to keep them somewhere between an hour and a half. If
They start getting expensive after that.
Yeah. But no, let's talk about anything that's on your heart, something that you thought I would ask you, but I didn't, or something you've thought of as we're talking. The main thing here is to get back to our theme of hunting Plott dogs or sticking with Plott dogs. And of course, if you have success with a dog, that's going to make you stick. But overall, why would a guy, if he's in the stud dog business, I mean, that's what he wants to do is breed dogs and collect stud fees. The Plott breed's probably not the best breed to go into because the numbers aren't there. I use, and maybe you can refute this. I used to have guys tell me all the time, boy, I'd like to have a nice Plott. Man, if I got a good Plott that could win, I could own the world. I could, just rack up, But, do you have any views on that at all, Bill?
I do. So we'd like to promote Lazarus as a stud. And there's some challenges with promoting any Plott male as a stud. One of the things you run into is what we talked about earlier. People that are hunting Plotts are passionate about their Plotts. And a lot of times that passion is driven by past experience with dad or grandpa or your hunting buddy. And so the first place you look is in your yard, those dogs you've had that outstanding experience with, where if you're take all that passion, all those experiences out of the picture, if your goal is to win hunts, like a lot of the people in the Walker breed are doing, they're looking, when they want to breed that female, they're looking for who was the most recent world champion, or who's been the world champion in the last couple of years. But that's kind of just a different mindset by people in the Plott breed. We're more passionate, I think.
Well, that's a good way to put it. In just bare bones terms, you'd say, Plott people like to breed in their own backyard instead of going, out and seeking out maybe something that could better themselves. Is that what you're saying at all, or am I missing the
Yes and no. But I mean, these people, my experience with the people that are in this breed is that they're in it for a different reason. And if you can continue that experience, to propagate and have a son or a grandson, it's kind of the feeling like a parent has a son, they'd like to see him follow in their footsteps. If I can bring that back and relive that. And I guess it kind of leads into, I've got this, cryogenic business at home where I
want you to talk a little bit about that and let the listeners know where they can get in touch with you if they're interested in your services. I want to tag that.
Okay. Well, I tell people contact me all the time, and and one of my specialties is working with some of the older dogs, because most of the people that do what I do, freezing semen, aren't willing to work with an older dog. I say it's because I have another job. This is something I do in my pastime, but I do it for people who are passionate. They say, if that dog means something to you, it's worth freezing, it's worth collecting. And I'll explain the odds to you that the older dog may not have as good odds of the survival or getting a litter of pups off of him. But if you're willing to spend the money, I don't want to deny you that opportunity, where some of these clinics, they only want to freeze top quality semen and I didn't realize it. Semen gets sold from one person to another, and it gets shipped all over the country to different reproduction clinics. And most people in this business want the reputation of having, it came from my predecessor, Dean Beitzel. When it came from Dean, we were going to get good stuff. We'd be proud of, you're going to get a nice litter of pups. And I may have the reputation that he freezes those old dogs, and you might be wasting your money. You might not get a litter of pups. I don't care. I'm helping my fellow houndsmen. And I talk to people all the time. I got this old dog, and well, first thing I explain is you should have done this years ago, and I explain why, and the odds aren't in your favor. But you know what? I'm willing to work with you. I'll do what we can.
Sure.
So
half a loaf's better than none sometimes.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Well, how do they get in touch with you? Do you have a website? Do you have a Facebook?
A Facebook page. So I have a personal page, Bill Schinninger. I have my kennel page, Saddle Up Plotts. And then we also have a page, Saddle Up Canine Cryo. And they can message me through that. I've got business cards, and my phone number is, I can share that, 419-467-7689. We're in Northwest Ohio. Location means a lot to people because you're transporting your dogs to me, and then I can store the semen, or if you have a way to transport your semen and a place to store it, that's fine too. But that's something that I got started with because my experience, I've got a little bit of an education, and I like to learn new things. And I bought that link dog that we talked about earlier. I took him out to Dean before I ever took him to the woods, and Dean says, "Oh, he's an old dog." And I did beg him to freeze him the first time, but he would never do it again. I took him to a couple other clinics, and they said he's just too old. And I just decided that, one, I want to be an advocate for the industry to get your young dogs frozen.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I tell people to get your young dog checked when your fever dog, Steve, we need to get him checked. He's 14, 15 months old. How long do you want to campaign him and find out he's sterile?
Yeah. Correct.
Because you'd be surprised the number of dogs that are sterile.
Sure. Well, that's something that Mark and I've already discussed and plan to do. And there's a lot of reasons for that, I think. But breed them early, I think, is always the best choice. But you need to know kind of what you got before you start, dipping into that basket. But,
yes. But on the, if you have an opportunity to breed, at least get your semen analyzed so you know what you've got. Because here's what happens is we're all procrastinators in a way. So your dog gets to be 2.5 years old. Boy, he's doing pretty good. We ought to breed him. Let's get a litter of pups out of him. So it takes another 6 months. You get to find a female. 3 years old, you breed that female. 2 months later, she has a litter of pups. And those pups get to be 10 months old. Well, he's reproducing. So now your dog's what?
He's 4.5 instead of just turning.
Well, you're right. And there's something to be said about using AI for these dogs. These dogs are in competition, young dogs, the mental aspect of it all. Hey, we got to do another podcast just on this reproductive stuff, because I know you can talk all day about it, and I want to hear it, But
okay, well, I'd be happy to do that with you, Steve. I'm not the expert, but I do have a little experience. I do have some strong feelings, some philosophies, some ideas, and I'm here to help houndsmen. Most of my business is with coon hunters, but I enjoy educating people, and I want them to understand what they need to do, what they can do, what their opportunities are. It's like I say, I want to be an advocate for people to get their dogs checked young and frozen young. So,
absolutely great advice, Bill and Alex. It's really been a pleasure to have you guys on the podcast today. I think my 3 days of talking nonstop has finally put my voice out of commission.
Well, we've enjoyed your company, Steve, and like I gotta throw out a plug to Alex. I appreciate everything he's done for me. I wouldn't be where I am today without him. I just couldn't do it. So,
well, I've really enjoyed spending these few days with Alex. And my first time I saw Alex, I said, "Who's this guy, man? He's got way too much energy."
Well,
But after I get to know you, Alex, I've really enjoyed the experience. We've joked around, kidded at each other, and a lot of give and take and all. But it's been a really good.
I think Bill's been a good influence on my life, and we're getting somewhere. So
good.
I appreciate
Well, let's
the
just
good
real
words.
quickly give kudos where kudos are due. Saddle Up Plott, which is your kennel name, Bill, has had a pretty darn good weekend here at APA Breed Days. I think it was started off, I attended the meeting, and you were named their Coon Hunter of the Year. Is that right?
yes, sir. It's an honor to be recognized by your peers, and I value that. And the APA has been good to me, and I appreciate them recognizing.
Well, and they also awarded Lazarus the Coonhound of the Year award 2 years running, I believe.
Well,
they didn't have one for the year before, and then he won that last year's APA days. So when he won this year, they said, "Oh, well, since we didn't have an award, that's 21 too."
Right. And then Cowboy, he kind of showed his stuff on the bench. First of all, winning the champion male 2 days in a row, right?
Yes, sir.
And then the biggie, you were king of the hunt with Cowboy.
Yes, sir. We Friday night, Thursday, nobody in the hunt. There was 6 casts. They were all dead. There wasn't no coons in Tennessee on Thursday night.
It was a pretty windy night, I know, but I went out and
we couldn't
sat
find
in a
nothing.
truck while you were hunting.
We tried. It was terrible.
Cowboys out of Lazarus's first litter, and we were blessed to have a nice female to breed him to, and he's been showing. Lazarus has been showing us that he can reproduce, and you've got an example of that with Mark.
Well, we were out there Thursday night. Mark was. I think he drove about 30 miles out and all, and ended up with as we say, a dead cast, no plus points like everybody else. But Mark, he's had a lot of fun with Fever in these events of different kinds, and it's just kind of fun with this pup. You say, "Wonder if he'll do this," and you put him in, and he does. So he was in his first dash race. This
this is just a first for me this weekend. I have we had a litter of pups here 10 months ago now. 11 months ago, and I kept a pup that I liked out of Lazarus and a female we called Jinx, and I brought him along this weekend just because I wanted to show him off. He is the prettiest dog. He's bigger than Lazarus, and he's just beautiful. But he's only ever seen one cage coon in his whole life, and he didn't bark at it very well. He was a pup. It was early. I just wanted to see fooling around. But he's so loud. He's one of the loudest Plotts I've ever heard. So I brought him along this weekend just to put him in that treeing contest.
Yeah.
See, just kind of show
see
off.
what he would do.
Well, I hoped he would bark at the coon, but really I just wanted to show off that voice of how loud he is. And I was really tickled. Mark walked up with Fever, and Fever barked at that coon from 30 feet away a few times. And that pup realized what it was. He started looking down, and he went to barking crazy. And I cut him in there when it was his turn, and he went in there and he treed the whole time.
Cool.
And stayed hooked.
Well, Mark, he real briefly, just for his sake, and I'll give 100% of the credit on as far as the training and where Fever's been and what he's accomplished to Mark. But of course, if Bill hadn't have bred him, we wouldn't have this story. But Fever had a good time in the coon and bear treeing contest and in the water race. So he took home some hardware.
Yeah,
so
Mark took home a truckload of hardware.
Yeah, so
and dog food.
And, a lot of dog food. They had Pride dog food,
sponsored
50
this
pound
weekend,
bags. Man,
I think they took home 8 bags.
Man, they must have given a semi load of dog food away here. But listen, guys, it was a great weekend, and I know that long road's looking
it's getting
longer in it. So we need to wrap this thing up. I do want to thank my friends, Buddy Woodbury, Jason Doobie out at W Hunting Supply, DUsupply.com. Those guys are just great. They make this podcast possible. You need anything in the line of hunting gear or apparel, especially your electronics, and you need service to back it up. Those are your guys, DUsupply.com. Thanks again to Bill Scheniger, to Alex Recker for coming on Gone to the Dogs this week, and this podcast will be airing. I don't have the dates in front of me, but the John Strickland podcast is on, I think, as we speak. No, tomorrow I will be having representatives from Utah Houndsman and also from Michigan Hunting Dog Federation. And then following that episode, we'll have this episode with Bill Scheninger and Alex Recker. So once again, if anybody asks you where Steve Fielder is, you'll be pretty safe to tell them that he's gone to the dogs.